Star Maker by Olaf Stapledon. Chapter 1. The Earth. 1. The Starting Point. One night, when I had tasted bitterness, I went out onto the hill. Dark heather checked my feet. Below marched the suburban lamps. Windows, their curtains drawn, were shut eyes, inwardly watching the lives of dreams. Beyond the sea's level darkness, a lighthouse pulsed. Overhead, obscurity. I distinguished our own house, our islet in the tumultuous and bitter currents of the world. There, for a decade and a half, we two, so different in quality, had grown in and into one another, for mutual support and nourishment in intricate symbiosis. There daily we planned our several undertakings and recounted the day's oddities and vexations. There letters piled up to be answered, socks to be darned. There the children were born, those sudden new lives. There, under that roof, our own two lives, recalcitrant sometimes to one another, were all the while thankfully one larger, more conscious life than either alone. All this, surely, was good. Yet there was bitterness. And bitterness not only invaded us from the world, it welled up also within our own magic circle. For horror at our futility, at our own unreality, and not only at the world's delirium, had driven me out onto the hill. We were always hurrying from one little urgent task to another, but the upshot was insubstantial. Had we, perhaps, misconceived our whole existence? Were we, as it were, living from false premises? And in particular, this partnership of ours, this seemingly so well-based fulcrum for activity in the world, was it after all nothing but a little eddy of complacent and ingrown domesticity, ineffectively whirling on the surface of the great flux, having in itself no depth of being and no significance? Had we perhaps, after all, deceived ourselves? Behind those rapt windows, did we, like so many others, indeed live only a dream? In a sick world, even the hale are sick, and we too, spinning our own little life, mostly by rote, seldom with clear cognizance, seldom with firm intent, were products of a sick world. Yet this life of ours was not all sheer and barren fantasy. Was it not spun from the actual fibers of reality, which we gathered in with all the comings and goings through our door, all our traffic with the suburb and the city, and with remoter cities, and with the ends of the earth? And were we not spinning together an authentic expression of our own nature? Did not our life issue daily as more or less firm threads of active living, and mesh itself into the growing web, the intricate, ever-proliferating pattern of mankind? I considered us with quiet interest and a kind of amused awe. How could I describe our relationship even to myself without either disparaging it or insulting it with the tawdry decoration of sentimentality? For this our delicate balance of dependence and independence, this coolly critical, shrewdly ridiculing, but loving mutual contact, was surely a microcosm of true community, was after all in its simple style an actual and living example of that high goal which the world seeks. The whole world? The whole universe? Overhead, obscurity, unveiled a star. One tremulous arrow of light, projected how many thousands of years ago, now stung my nerves with vision and my heart with fear. For in such a universe as this, what significance could there be in our fortuitous, our frail, our evanescent community? But now irrationally I was seized with a strange worship, not surely of the star, that mere furnace which mere distance falsely sanctified, but of something other, which the dire contrast of the star and us signified to the heart. Yet what? What could thus be signified? Intellect, peering beyond the star, discovered no star maker, but only darkness, no love, no power even, but only nothing. And yet the heart praised. Impatiently, I shook off this folly and reverted from the inscrutable to the familiar and the concrete. Thrusting aside worship and fear also, and bitterness, I determined to examine more coldly this remarkable us, this surprisingly impressive datum, which to ourselves remained basic to the universe, though in relation to stars, it appeared so slight a thing. Considered even without reference to our belittling cosmical background, we were, after all, insignificant, perhaps ridiculous. We were such a commonplace occurrence, so trite, so respectable. We were just a married couple, making shift to live together without undue strain. Marriage, in our time, was suspect, and ours, with its trivial romantic origin, was doubly suspect. We'd first met when she was a child. Our eyes encountered. She looked at me for a moment with quiet attention. Even I had romantically imagined, with obscure, deep-lying recognition. I, at any rate, recognized in that look, so I persuaded myself in my fever of adolescence, my destiny. Yes, how predestinate had seemed our union. Yet now, in retrospect, how accidental. True, of course, that as a long-married couple we fitted rather neatly like two close trees whose trunks have grown upwards together as a single shaft, mutually distorting, but mutually supporting. Coldly I now assessed her as merely a useful but often infuriating adjunct to my personal life. We were, on the whole, sensible companions. We left one another a certain freedom, and so we were able to endure our proximity. Such was our relationship. Stated thus, it did not seem very significant for the understanding of the universe. Yet in my heart I knew that it was so. Even the cold stars, even the whole cosmos with its inane immensities, could not convince me that this, our prized atom of community, imperfect as it was, short-lived as it must be, was not significant. But could this indescribable union of ours really have any significance at all beyond itself? Did it, for instance, prove that the essential nature of all human beings was to love rather than to hate and fear? Was it evidence that all men and women the world over, though circumstance might prevent them, were at heart capable of supporting a worldwide, love-knit community? And further, did it, being itself a product of the cosmos, prove that love was in some way basic to the cosmos itself? And did it afford, through its own felt intrinsic excellence, some guarantee that we too, its frail supporters, must in some sense have eternal life? Did it, in fact, prove that love was God, and God awaiting us in His heaven? No! Our homely, friendly, exasperating, laughter-making, undecorated, though most prized community of spirit proved none of these things. It was no certain guarantee of anything but its own imperfect rightness. It was nothing but a very minute, very bright epitome of one out of the many potentials of existence. I remembered the swarms of the unseeing stars. I remembered the tumult of hate and fear and bitterness, which is man's world. I remembered, too, our own not infrequent discordancy, and I reminded myself that we should very soon vanish like the flurry that a breeze has made on still water. Once more, there came to me a perception of the strange contrast of the stars and us. The incalculable potency of the cosmos mysteriously enhanced the tightness of our brief spark of community and of mankind's brief, uncertain venture. And these in turn quickened the cosmos. I sat down on the heather. Overhead, obscurity was now in full retreat. In its rear, the freed population of the sky sprang out of hiding, star by star. On every side, the shadowy hills or the guessed featureless sea extended beyond sight, but the hawk flight of imagination followed them as they curved downward below the horizon. I perceived that I was on a little round grain of rock and metal, filmed with water and with air, whirling in sunlight and darkness. And on the skin of that little grain, all the swarms of men, generation by generation, had lived in labor and blindness, with intermittent joy and intermittent lucidity of spirit, and all their history, with its folk wanderings, its empires, its philosophies, its proud sciences, its social revolutions, its increasing hunger for community, was but a flicker in one day of the lives of stars. If one could know whether among that glittering host there were here and there other spirit-inhabited grains of rock and metal, whether man's blundering search for wisdom and for love was a sole and insignificant tremor, or part of a universal movement. And thus concludes myself, Jonzo Didmo, reading out Olaf Stapledon's Star Maker, written in 1937. Thank you for hanging out, watching, and listening. Hey, it's Jonzo. Please like, subscribe, and click notifications in order to catch my readout of Chapter 2 of Olaf Stapledon's novel, Star Maker, and other fun sci-fi stuff.